the trees that tends to get natural ability to get rid of the mites. I still have mites on them, but not that. I've heard that you need to have a couple of different trees to get cross-pollination, but I haven't been able to actually prove that.
Besides the nutrients for the mites, do you spray the lychee trees?
Yeah, with a little sulfur, but that doesn't seem to work very well. If you pull it off like this, see, you've broken the skin. And that's not going to last very long.
How far north can you grow these?
I would say
Central Florida, maybe?
Orlando, maybe about right now. Nowadays might be the furthest north.
That's how you know when they're ready.
Yeah, if it's like this, like like smooth like this.
But the color is the #1 dead giveaway, right?
Yeah, color is important, but also the smoothness of the skin is important.
Hello everybody, welcome to Fruitful Trees. We are back with Pete. I did another interview with him and I'll put that below, part 1 and 2, the links, but he has a farm which he calls Lychee Fruit Store. And he has a tremendous amount of lychees. How you doing, Pete?
Great.
We're gonna go around and learn about lychees today. I've had several people talk about lychees recently because we're right in the middle of lychee season and Pete has a ton for sale. He sells mostly wholesale, but he will sell retail. You can contact him at the link below and talk to him about that. But this place is amazing. I'm excited to show you this. And anything you want to say before we get started?
Buy more lychee. It's good for you.
All right, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everybody. Here we are back at the Lychee Fruit Store, but they have a whole bunch of other fruits. But today we're talking a lot about lychees. This is Pete. How you doing, Pete?
Great. How are you doing?
Very good. Everyone loves your other videos. I'm going to put links below to that. But we're in the middle of lychee season right now, right?
Yep.
So how long have you been growing lychees?
20 years.
20 years. What made you 20 years ago to decide you want to grow lychees?
My wife went to some farm right near us and told me how great they were.
And what varieties do you have?
Sweetheart, High Kip, Mauritius. I got one Emperor tree, but it's not producing. I think that's all.
Now,
Brewster. I got Brewster.
Now, the lychees produce every year, or they have alternate bearing?
Mine produce every year.
Every year. Now, most don't, right?
And most people don't give them enough nutrition to keep, to give it enough impetus to have it next year. But if you give it enough nutrition, not nitrogen or potassium, it's nutrition. The minor elements. That's what gives you fruit year on end, because then you got to build up their energy, and they do it with the minor elements, not with the potassium and nitrogen.
Interesting. What about the lychee mite? Did you have issues with that?
Yeah, but that's another thing. If you give them a lot of the minor elements, the trees tends to get natural ability to get rid of the mites. I still have mites on them, but not that. I've heard some people saying they've completely lost all the leaves because of the mites, but I don't have a single tree that has that problem. And
did you learn for that through trial and error, or you just knew that it needed more?
Well, I heard one extension agent over on the West Coast saying that, and so then I started thinking about it, and like we used to have this trouble with the what's it called, that little white bug.
Yeah.
I still have trouble with it, but inside of here, there's very little problem with it. It's on the outside of my farm is where the problem is, where there is less minor elements and less energy in the trees. Where the trees have enough energy to control everything themselves, they can ward off some of these insects. So that's where I got my idea. Plus, I give them sulfur and stuff like that too.
How many lychee trees would you say you have total?
1,500.
1,500. How many acres of lychees?
Lychee is about 15.
Wow. And can we take a look at some of them?
Yeah.
All right,
look down here?
Yeah.
Or want to look over here? There's some we've been picking down here. So.
Now, I know you're growing other fruit. Do you plant all the lychees in one area, or do you disperse different fruit trees in different places?
Well, all these lychee trees were planted before I bought the farm. So they were planted kind of interspersed. Some of the sweetheart and the rooster were interspersed. I've heard that you need to have a couple different trees to get cross-pollination, but I haven't been able to actually prove that. So I'm not sure if it's true or not.
So if somebody has one lychee tree on their property, you're not sure if it's self-pollinating or not?
I'm pretty sure it is self-pollinating. I have this one emperor tree all by itself, and I've had it loaded with fruit. The only problem is it's sitting too close to the ocean and gets too warm, and so it doesn't have fruit every year.
Got you.
And this year it had flowers, and there was no bees around to pollinate it.
So then, other than the elements that you're talking about, it also has needs the right amount of chill hours?
Well, I don't believe that.
But how come you get fruit here all the time, but sometimes you don't get fruit at the one near the beach?
Could be chill hours, but it's also that I don't give it enough nutrients.
Oh, you don't give that one enough nutrients?
I kind of, for the last couple of years, I've been giving it more nutrients, and I've noticed more fruit on the tree.
Okay.
But I'm still not sure that you can prove that.
Sure. Well, here we are in front of some of your lychee trees, and they're pretty loaded. So these are the trees that were already here when you first came here, right? So when we look at these trees here, is there one in special in particular you want to show us or talk about?
These are all Mauritius. This is, some of them have a lot of fruit on and some don't. Like this is a sweetheart that doesn't have very much fruit on.
Now, besides the variety, is there a reason why like one Mauritius would have a lot and one wouldn't right next to each other?
It's usually because it wasn't trimmed correctly, because you don't get enough sun. A lot of, like this one here has a lot of fruit on it, and this one doesn't, but you can see that they're overlapping branches.
Wow, look at that. That's beautiful.
And if they get overlapping branches, they get pissed off.
And what kind is this?
Mauritius.
So how far apart would you say these trees are?
They're supposed to be 25 feet. I think those are 25 feet.
So in the old days, these were already here 25 feet.
Well, actually, this row I planted myself. This one wasn't here. But
so what was this size, 25 feet?
Yeah.
And then you planted this row. You planted them similar to this row?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's what the experts say, 25 feet north, south, and 20 feet east, west.
Okay.
Or the other way around.
So there's a big footprint on lychees.
Yeah, well, it's that, like I said, you got to trim them. Like over there, you can see hardly any fruit, but you can see the branches are touching each other. Yeah. Which is a bad sign.
Would you say
we went through and trimmed all the trees, but sometimes the lychees grow so fast and they, wipe out the distance, and so you don't have any openings by the time you get. Like the sweetheart, we've last year I think we trimmed them twice. We trimmed them once in August, and then we went back again and trimmed 2 months later because they kept on growing together too much.
Now some people say that sweethearts don't fruit every year, so they charge a lot more money for sweethearts versus others, but you haven't found that to be true?
No, I found that you don't get as much fruit on each year. It's like we picked like 500 pounds of Mauritius in 5 hours yesterday, and then we picked 500 pounds of sweetheart, and it took us like 8 hours. Okay. And the guys had to cut the tops off the trees in some places because they were too big. I mean, the sweetheart grows so fast, and that's the biggest problem with sweetheart.
Now, do you charge the same for your sweetheart and your Mauritius, or are they different prices?
Different price. I mean, it's a lot more work for me.
Sure. And everybody, I'm going to put the information below how to contact Pete, but he sells mostly wholesale, but in certain circumstances he will charge retail. Just contact him at the Facebook link. Yeah. That's the best way?
Very good.
Okay. Yep. All right, so let's take a walk here and see your lychee trees. So,
yeah, let me show you one other interesting fact this year. See those branches on the ground?
Yes.
Those were loaded with fruit. And the wind came through and wiped them out.
Oh, wow.
And there's probably 25, 30 of those same kind of branches sitting around here.
Were they ripe fruit or no?
Some were ripe, but some weren't. I had one, actually there's one tree back there that cracked in half. just half the tree went, and it was really full of fruit. And that one over there was another one over there that cracked one day when I was eating lunch. I heard it crack.
Wow. Now, I know on mangoes, the best time to trim is after you pull off the last mango. How does it work with lychees? Do you still trim it when there's still some fruit on the tree, or?
Usually we're still busy picking fruit, so there might be some fruit when we start picking. Actually, I think it was 2 years ago, we thought we were all done, so I started trimming the sweethearts. There was a bunch of fruit on the top we never saw before.
Wow. So is there ideally a best time to trim them?
Yeah, probably from August through maybe September, because then they start. You need to let them settle for a while, and rest up for like 2 months, so they can start putting enough energy into the blooms. If you do it too much after that, they don't have enough energy to put into the blooms.
Sure. And besides the nutrients for the mites, do you spray the lychee trees?
Yeah, with a little sulfur, but that doesn't seem to work very well.
So sulfur is the only thing?
That's the only thing that USDA recommends.
Well, not just for the mite in general. Do you use any other sprays on the lychees?
I used to spray them with nutritional spray, but now we just inject the nutritional spray into the irrigation system.
Okay.
It's a lot easier for me.
Okay, and look at this. This is loaded. Wow. So what size would you recommend? I know, of course, it depends on if somebody has a small yard and so on, but what do you think is the ideal size for a lychee tree from a retail and from a commercial standpoint?
Well, these are a little bit...
I mean, from a private yard to a commercial yard.
Well, the problem is you can still get fruit on them, but it gets to be hard to pick the fruit. And these trees are really too hard for my ladders, so the guy's got to go up there with a machete and cut branches off, which is okay, because that's what we're going to do 2 months from now.
Sure.
So
you're kind of trimming them when you're harvesting them.
Yeah.
Wow, this is amazing. And again, everybody, you can see how much footprint it takes. So if you have a small tree in a yard like this, you're going to get a small amount like this. You might get more. I'm sure you pick some from there.
Well, actually, you can get a lot of fruit on a smaller tree. I have smaller trees that are almost as loaded as that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe we can look at those?
Well, they're over in the other farm, and I don't have any around here that are like that.
So what size would you recommend people that are growing 1 or 2 lychee trees in their own house keep them?
Well, the matter is you got to keep the branches free from the next tree or free from the house.
Space between them. So
yeah, you just need so they get enough sun. That's the important thing.
Wow, look at that. That's so beautiful. And you get these every year, right?
Well, last 2 years we had very little. We had big problems the last 2 years. This year is probably the biggest year we've ever had.
What were the issues you had the other years?
I don't know if I gave them enough nutrition or I didn't trim. I know I was trying to trim the trees for mites for a couple years, and that didn't help the fruiting of the trees. All it did is supposedly get rid of the mites, and it didn't get rid of the mites. And so I went back to my old pruning methods, which is to make sure that there's enough open space between the trees. And that helped more, because I can see in certain areas where we didn't get the trees trimmed close, get an open space, and there's no fruit on those trees.
Sure. And do you have more lychees than any other fruit tree, right? Because I know you have a lot of different fruit trees. Yeah,
we have probably 2/3 of the farm is lychee.
Now, what about longans? Do you have any longan trees?
Yeah, we got about 200 to 250.
Okay.
And they're really loaded this year too.
But the season is a little different?
Yeah, our season starts at the end of lychee season.
So it's lychee season and then longan season.
Yeah.
But they both overlap with mango season, right?
Yeah, because last year we were able to pick our mangoes at the end of lychee season, but the lychee season was only like 1 or 2 weeks long last year. So people are picking mangoes now, but I would have no time at all to pick mangoes. They would just go to rot anyway.
Now, when you say the lychee season was 1 or 2 weeks, how do you know? Like a tree like this, Like after what, 2 weeks or a month, they fall down and they go bad? How do you know how long the season is?
We've sold them all.
You sold them all. But if you didn't sell them, how long would these stay on the tree if you didn't sell them?
They would last at least 3 weeks, I think. Those aren't real red yet. There's some more back there that are a lot more red than these. This area here is just starting to get good. We haven't even picked anything in this area at all because it tends to be a later crop than the ones in back.
How old are these trees?
Like I said, we bought this thing like 20 years ago, and at that time they were, well, at that time they were probably about this size, but then 2 years after we bought it, we had one of those hurricanes that flattened the whole area.
Okay.
And so all these trees really grew up from the ground.
So did the trees just break?
Yeah, they broke like crazy.
But they grew back?
Yeah.
Nice.
Lychee trees and longans grow back just about every time. I had some longan trees that broke in that hurricane, and I gave up on them and planted them. In fact, one place I planted a lychee tree right on where it was. And then like a year later, it started sprouting up its longan.
Do you sell trees here?
We used to, but then after COVID, it got too much. It got too dangerous for us to do anything. We're thinking about start selling trees again next year.
Okay.
Just lychee trees mostly.
Now let me ask you, there's lychees and longans, which are similar fruit. What about rambutan? Do you grow any rambutan? Why don't people grow rambutan? Does it not grow here in South Florida?
It's not. It's too cold.
Too cold. Too cold here?
Yeah.
Wow, they grow in, so they must be really subtropical.
Yeah,
like really tropical.
Puerto Rico and the Caribbean islands and stuff like that. But nobody grows rambutan around here. I got 2 rambutan trees in pots that I bring in to my garage in winter.
Do you get fruit on them?
No.
And what about pest here? I mean, that looks like a field day for squirrels and raccoons. How do you deal with pest here?
Well, actually, we don't have any trouble with the raccoons. We got a little trouble with squirrels because there's a telephone line right here. Otherwise, squirrels, they don't like to jump. If there's an open space between 2 trees, they don't like to jump that far. And they also don't want at all to go on the ground. They want to either jump from tree to tree or go on a telephone line. So our biggest problem with squirrels is right along this line here where there's a telephone line.
And how much of your crop would you say they eat?
This year hardly any. I haven't seen very many squirrels around.
Okay.
I don't know what happened to them, but I didn't get rid of them.
You don't know what happened to them. Maybe one of your neighbors took care of them.
It could be the dogs. There's a lot of dogs around here.
Do you have dogs?
No. But people who have dogs don't have any problems with raccoons or squirrels. So it's a good thing. But I was listening to a YouTube this morning about one guy, I think there was one of the guys that you had a thing on, and he was saying that he had Rottweilers and he couldn't let them loose to scare the animals away because of the neighborhood kids and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So all of these, and the sales are doing good this year.
Yep.
Wow. So if people wanted to place an order, they contact you, whether it's wholesale or retail, how much advance notice do they need?
At least 1 day so we can pick them.
At least 1 day. And when you get the lychee home, do you recommend them being refrigerated?
Yeah, more importantly with lychees is to put them in plastic because they dry out real easy. And a lot of times you hear about the lychees that are sold in New York, they're all crisp. That's because they didn't keep them in plastic to keep the humidity up. Like I have refrigerators that I put lychees in, but by the next day they'll be crisp because the natural thing for a refrigerator is to lower the humidity down to like 20%. But I have a cooler over there that doesn't lower the humidity, but it still keeps them cold, and I can keep them a week in there.
Now, if you put them in the fridge, you still need to put them in a plastic bag?
Yeah, especially because they get, because I said the humidity goes down to 20%. And that's too much for a lychee.
That's a great tip. Out. So you buy the lychees, as soon as you get home, put them in a plastic bag, and then put them in the fridge.
Yeah. And if you want to freeze them, you put them in a really good plastic bag, and you can freeze Sweetheart for a year or 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now the other ones you can't freeze that long?
No, they have this big seed in them, and they tend to, some of the chemicals in the seed go into the fruit, and it kind of destroys the fruit after a certain amount of time.
But they do freeze well, the Sweetheart.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I sold, the other day I sold a guy 20 pounds, and he was going to put the whole thing in the freezer and eat for 2 years. Because he did that 2 years ago.
Now, I know most people peel the lychees, and they also get rid of the seed. Is the seed or the peel, have you heard of it ever being edible?
No.
No? You haven't heard of anyone doing anything with it or anything?
I've heard of people getting sick eating the peel.
Getting sick? Oh, really? From the peel? Really? Okay.
Yeah. Especially the ones from China and Mexico, because they put some sodium bacterial agent on them, which I heard is bad for your brain. But I don't know.
Yeah, speaking of that, a lot of people don't really talk about organic versus unorganic for some reason with lychees. When you see lychees sold, it just says lychees. How big is the organic lychee field? Are most groves organic, or the big commercial ones are non-organic? Do you know about that?
I don't think there's any. I think in Florida, I don't think there's any pests that have to be sprayed for lychee. You know, you got the mites, but they attack the leaves, not the fruit.
So is the fruit a good chance it's organic?
There is a problem with anthrax sometimes, which is a blackening of the lychee. I tried spraying 1 year with copper, and it didn't seem to do any good, and actually got me in trouble because one customer complained about the green on the lychee.
Sure. So can you show us maybe a below branch how the best way is to harvest? Do you cut it? Do you pull it off? Can you show us in one of your low branches? I know that you said these weren't totally ripe yet, so.
Well, we usually, I can't do that. I don't know if there's a low branch around here. All we do is just the guys just go in there and break it off.
They just break but like if you wanted one fruit, would somebody just
you can
pull it off here, or would you have to cut it here? What would be better to do?
Or if you can eat it right away, you can just pull it off. But if you pull it off like this, see, you've broken the skin. And that's not going to last very long.
So now I've seen some farms I went to, they said like woodpeckers might get into it and stuff. Is that, they say the fruit's still edible, and they might not be sellable because they don't look great. So what about woodpeckers and things like that if they break it?
We throw them away.
All right. And do you have, here you go. Do you have any issues with woodpeckers here?
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
But it's not that big of a problem. There's a few woodpeckers around, but they aren't as bad as those blackbirds. Blackbirds sometimes. This year we haven't seen very many, and the crows are a problem too. Some years we've had a lot of problems with crows. They tend to attack but I put out scarecrows for the crows. I don't know if there's any around here. What we do is we put a big black piece of landscape fabric, and put a head on it. Looks like a crow's head.
Okay. Flying
in the wind, and they think it's a dead crow, and they're really scared of that. They're afraid somebody's going to come out and kill them too, so they get scared.
Sure.
But the blackbirds, you can't scare them away with anything.
And
maybe with I do use these sound machines for the blackbirds, and they tend to work somewhat for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, in the old days, didn't they use scarecrows?
I tried using scarecrows and never worked.
No. So
I even bought a owl, like a fake owl.
Yeah.
Didn't work at all.
Now, what do you tell us about the watering? What kind of water system do you have on these? How often do you water, and what kind of system do you have?
We water them. Right now, we're watering them about an hour a day with microjets. There's you can't see them very well, but there's microjets on each tree. And then we also have these poles for winter protection, for freeze protection. But we haven't had to use those since global warming took over.
So do the trees die if it gets too cold?
I've never had any die from cold. The only thing that I've had trees die from is not enough water.
So when you say protect them from cold, do you mean they don't fruit as well if it's too cold?
No, they like the cold. They actually do better with the cold.
So what are you protecting them from?
Well, in the early days, you had to protect them because the flowers would be coming out in January, and the flowers are very susceptible to freezes, and so you could lose freezes. In the first couple of years, I had another farm down the street, and I had planted a whole bunch of mauritius, and trees were only like 3 foot high, and we had a really hard freeze, and it killed off half of them because they were small, tender trees.
Because they were small, I see.
But when they get big, the frost is tend to lower to the ground, and so it's not going to affect these big, thick trunks. And it usually doesn't. I mean, when we had these before we had global warming, we have icicles coming from the trees from the sprinkler systems, and it didn't affect them because the water would protect. The water freezes at 32, but lychee trees don't really freeze until like 31 or 30.
Well, how far north can you grow these? Like, will lychee trees grow in Georgia? Will they grow, like, how far north do they grow?
I would say
Central Florida, maybe?
Orlando, maybe about right now. Nowadays might be the furthest north.
Okay.
Used to be that maybe like Fort Pierce was the furthest you could go, but nowadays with global warming, you can go probably Orlando, maybe even up to Jacksonville, I would think.
Okay, and you're watering an hour a day now. Do you have to water off-season more or less?
No, in off-season, we cut back the watering because if you give them too much water, all they'll do is produce leaves and new growth, and they won't put any energy into waiting for the flowering season.
So the only time you water them is now?
No, we water them in winter because like we get a dry season in winter, and if you don't water them, they're going to die. I've lost trees because they didn't get enough water in the dry season, and I've heard of people complaining that they were told not to water the trees in the dry season, and their trees died. And it's because you got to still give them some water, just don't overwater them. That's all.
I got you. Wow. And sometimes, like a mango tree, when it gets mature, you don't even need to water it because the water table's so low here.
Right.
A big tree like this, I mean, does it come a point where if you come upon a tree somewhere, you're like, that tree is so big and no water's gotten on it? Is that possible?
The lychee tree the roots, these are all, they're not grown from seed, they're from air layers. Air layers tend to put the roots out, horizontally, and they don't go deep down.
Oh, interesting.
So, and mangoes are grown on a seed plant that has natural tendencies to go down. So that's why you don't have to worry about the mangoes.
The lychee, okay, so do people graft lychees or they're mostly air layered?
They're mostly air layered. I've heard that grafts don't work that well, but
really?
I've never had a grafted lychee.
Interesting. And what about moving a tree? Let's say you said, oh, Paul, you're a nice guy, I'll give you this lychee tree. If I cut this back and moved it, what are the chances it's going to die?
Well, I've moved trees not this big, but I've moved trees that were like 5, 6 feet, maybe 7 feet tall, and I dug them up and got enough roots and put them in a giant pot, and I watered them a lot, and they survived. But I did the same thing. I got a giant tree, and I gave it to a friend of mine. It died.
But since the roots spread out versus going down, is it easy to dig them out?
Yeah, it didn't seem that hard. I just put the tractor in, got into the roots, got enough roots up, and it seemed to be pretty easy.
Is there a taproot like a jackfruit? There's one root that goes all the way now.
Like I said, it's an air layer. It's not a seeded plant. Where jackfruits are probably, like especially a grafted jackfruit, is all seeded.
Why do you think it's hard? Like when you go to tropical places that sell fruit trees, not all of them have lychee trees. Why do you think it's because they're air layered and not grafted?
They probably want to diversify.
So if somebody was starting their own garden, their own yard, where would you put lychee in terms of, would you suggest that this is the one tree they need, or would you suggest other fruits like that are easier to grow?
Well, probably mango would be a lot easier to grow than lychee, because you don't have to worry about pollinating and fertilizing and all that kind of stuff.
But then again, there are a lot of pests on mangoes, and you gotta...
Yeah,
lot of other
but I
different.
mean, if you're growing if you have a place closer to the ocean, you don't even have to do that because you get the salt
Sure.
air for them.
Sure.
Out here, we have to worry about anthracnose on both lychee and mango.
And mangoes you can keep much smaller than lychees if you have a small space.
Yeah, well, you can get varieties that are designed for a small space.
Yeah. So when it comes to lychees, some varieties dwarfer than the bigger varieties.
Well, like I said before, the Mauritius doesn't grow as fast up as a sweetheart grows really fast, and so you got to really trim it just about every year. The Mauritius, you could probably get by with trimming it every 2 or 3 years once it gets mature.
So Mauritius is the slowest growing one, would you say?
Of the ones I have, yeah, it's even slower than the Brewster.
Okay. Well, and what else can you make out of lychees? Can you make lychee shakes and smoothies and things? Or what do people do?
Martinis.
Yeah, it's popular, right?
Yeah.
People make martinis with it.
Yeah.
Now, people have given me a hard time about this. Well, how do you pronounce it? Lychee or lychee? What's the best way to pronounce it?
I don't know. I just say lychee, but
Lychee.
I know there's different variations.
I say lychee, and if you say, oh, no, it's lychee, they get upset.
Yeah, I've never heard of lychee being very popular.
Or maybe lychee, I don't know. I say lychee, and people say, no, it's a lot of the
Lychee?
comments. I don't know. People have issues
What is
with the way I
lychee?
say
Is
it.
it a French name or something like that?
All right, let's take a quick walk here and just see some more of your trees.
You can turn down this way. There's some nice trees over this way.
Okay. Now, I notice you don't trim between. Is that just because you're too busy picking lychees, or is there a reason
There's
you
no
don't
need,
do
but
that?
these I'm trying to let it grow into I forgot what the term is for
Somebody had mentioned to me that it's better to leave it natural, and some people say, well, no, if you don't want to leave grass around the tree because it might mess with the growth. So what do you think? Because you're growing all these trees.
I've heard all that I've been reading a lot about putting different kinds of natural growth into the soil so that the plants put more minerals back in the soil, and that's what I think is good. But I don't have time to.
So ideally, do you think it's best to trim around the tree or not?
I don't see any benefit for it.
Okay, you don't see disadvantage to letting this stuff grow around the tree?
No.
What about other fruit
Look at all
trees?
these trees; they're growing like crazy.
What about other fruit trees like mangoes and stuff? Do you recommend those trimming around it or not necessarily?
Yeah, I think mangoes are better because they tend to get certain weeds that go into the tree, like vines and stuff like that, more than I've had trouble with vines on these. But if you get enough grass growing on, see, like this tree over here has enough undergrowth on it, it's not letting the vines grow very well.
But from a nutritional standpoint, not the vine standpoint, from a nutritional standpoint, do you think it messes with the fruit on mangoes and other trees? No.
Oh, with mangoes, no. I don't think it messes with the fruit on mangoes.
Okay.
I don't think it messes with the fruit on lychees either.
I know someone actually said they use Roundup around their mango trees, and they said it doesn't affect the fruit at all. But what's your opinion about putting Roundup around a fruit tree? Do you think it messes with the fruit?
I used to, but I used to use Roundup, but I've heard that Roundup will stay in the soil for 2 or 3 years and go into the fruit for 2 or 3 years. So I gave it up completely.
Yeah, probably not a good practice, not healthy.
Yeah. See, here's a nice tree over here.
What is that?
That's the Mauritius.
Mauritius.
All the
So
sweethearts
red.
have been picked in this area.
Is that how you know when they're ripe, by the color?
Yeah. They also, I don't know if I can reach any, but the skin gets more smooth. I don't know if you can see that. It's more smooth. This would be a sweetheart, it'd be all prickly up, it'd be like all kinds of prickly things. But they both would be ripe, but this one has to be smooth.
So different varieties, well, one has to be smooth and one not?
Mauritius has to be smooth. Like this is kind of smooth.
Okay.
And you never get a sweetheart to be that smooth.
Now somebody told me when you peel it on the inside, if it's like pink, that means it's more ripe or something. Have you heard that?
No.
No.
I just eat them too fast, I think.
But that's how you know when they're ready.
Yeah, if it's like this, like like smooth like this.
But the color is the #1 dead giveaway, right?
Yeah, color is important, but also the smoothness of the skin is important.
Sure.
So a lot of times you can get green lychees that are smooth on the skin. There might be a couple here I can show you that are green, but they have smooth skin and they're still ripe because
they're ripe. So
they didn't get enough sun.
The smoothness is more important. So the sun's what gives the color.
Yeah.
But the smoothness can be smooth and ripe, but not red. Now, are they sweeter if they're red or not necessarily?
Usually they're sweeter if they're red, but if they've been shaded and they've been growing long enough and they're smooth, they usually are like this one over here. So you can see that one's kind of greenish already because it's low. It doesn't get enough sun, but the ones right above it are really nice and red, and they probably both taste the same.
Okay. Of course, that's more appealing if you're selling at retail.
Right.
Than that, but they taste the same.
Yeah.
Very nice. This is a beautiful place. Wow. Do you remember how old you were when you tasted your first lychee?
25 years ago, which would be 50 or something like that.
So before you got this place?
Yeah, when my wife went and started buying them.
Wow. Did you ever think you would have a farm like this? No.
No.
Really amazing. Wow. All right, everybody, I'm going to put the link below. Thank you, Pete, so much for taking the time to show us.
Very good.
All right, one more question before we leave here. For people that are curious, how much is your wholesale and retail? Does it depend how many?
Yeah, it depends on wholesale. We change daily, so I can't really give you a number, but the retail right now is $7 for Mauritius and $12 for Sweetheart.
Okay. All right, everybody, I told you this place is absolutely amazing. Amazing. And he grows other things other than just lychees, but thank you for showing us around, Pete.
Thank you for being here.
Okay. How long is the lychee season going to last now that you'll have for sale?
I think 2 or 3 weeks yet.
2 or 3 weeks. So I'm glad I got this video up now. Get them while they last because the season's short, but they're so good. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. The links are below to his other videos I did with him and also his link to contact him. Until then, everybody, have a great day and keep growing. For more educational videos about mangoes and other fruits and how to grow fruit trees, please look out the other videos on this channel, Fruitful Trees, and also subscribe if you like, and also share these videos with others. Thank you for watching. Have a great day and keep growing.